I came out in an October day in 2020, and there was a frost, and there was a frost on the roof. And then approaching this building, I was just looking, and I was shocked at what I was observing for roof sag and the roof panels. And I thought, okay, it's an old building. Has it always been doing that? But there had been some historic architectural investigations. And the investigations revealed in a report some time back powder post infestation on the roof. Well, at the point in time where we reviewed the previous architect's report, I contacted the chief building official in Essex, and we wanted to do an actual hands-on inspection. And in looking at it, my colleagues became stone-faced when they saw these beams. And our observations were quite shocking about the powder post beetle infestation and the damage it had caused. And the interesting thing is the historic structure, that damage was historic. That damage was probably 75 years ago, and now just really starting to show itself. So with it being that critical, the whole roof structure in a position of actually being lost, and this structure actually going into collapse, it was critical for us to get going and just action those items that the historic report and assessment had identified. And we re-engaged the heritage architect and started to do further investigations, and then proceeded with that additional work.
We began this project with a building assessment of all the buildings on the site. The priority became to look at the house first. The house on the site is kind of like, it's really like the key element that describes the property. So having had the chance to work on that portion of the site to restore the house to the point that we were able to get it is important in terms of being the symbol of the property. So in terms of how you go forward with this site, it becomes the starting point or the anchor for the other works that will occur. There were some severe conditions at the house that needed to be addressed to protect it to the future. Those things have been dealt with and been resolved. There are other items that may be not as significant that are yet to come, but then that's a jumping off point for the rest of the site. This is our marquee building. It is our center point. And so it references and it symbolizes the site as a whole. I think there's a couple things regarding the building that are unique. I don't think we ever worked on a building with such close exposure to the lake. And we recognize that caused, or that puts the building in a situation where it's subject to higher levels of exposure to rain, moisture, of possible deterioration. So I guess one of the surprises was when we opened up the wall for the foundation work, we found that there was deterioration in some of the base beams that surround the building. And that was an extra scope we undertook to actually correct those beam problems and restore the integrity of both wings of the building. The central portion at the front steps back and is protected by the porch, but the two wings, east and west, are actually subject to more exposure, and as a result there was significant deterioration that was occurring in the beams. You want to preserve as much of the original fabric of the building as possible. So whereas in a house renovation where you have deterioration occurring in siding, etc., you may choose just to replace all the siding. We went to great pains on this front elevation and discovered that some of the siding here was very original to the building, so it was retained at all costs. And other areas where we had deterioration, you'd either use a full replacement if the board is substantially deteriorated. If only a small portion, we'd use a Dutchman, which is basically cutting and adding a piece. Or if the area of the board is just a localized deterioration, they would use a methodology of just consolidation, which would be use wood fillers to restore that component. There are components in this house that are not unlike a lot of heritage buildings, and you'll see that at the corner boards. And it's a lovely detail where it's a beaded outside edge and a board that runs to it from both sides. And so it gives a very nice distinct character. Those pieces were carefully restored on 2 or 3 corners of the building where there had been deterioration occurring. We want to keep the history. We want to keep the history of how someone did build a house. We want to keep the fabric in terms of the materials that were used, just so that we can understand our past and actually learn from it, but also appreciate how things were done at an earlier time.
So as the curator, I worked very closely with the architects and looked at heritage preservation and perspective on the project. What materials do we want to use? What's in keeping with the historic timeline, with the family's original design and structure of the home? What pieces have been added or changed by families who've lived here since that time, or even by the Conservation Authority or other owners of the property? And what's the best restoration that we can do to present it in a beautiful, cohesive, and historically appropriate way? It was exciting to talk to the architect about this home being constructed from Mr. and Mrs. Park's ideas of what a grand home should be like. Of course, there were no particular architects here on that historic frontier all those years ago. So they were remembering, homes, Mr. Park particularly from the East Coast, and bringing those ideas here with them, and I'm sure explaining them to local tradesmen and people who could build this beautiful structure. So in lots of ways, it is a great example of that Greek Revival architectural style, and in some ways it was from the beginning an interpretation or memory of that style. So that was a lot of fun.
We started off, it was work to the roof area because the roof was sagging, and then it extended from there, and then we started to work around the building and done as many repairs as we could within the time frame and what money allowed. Restoration jobs are similar, but there's different challenges for every job that you do. So everyone's different because it's old and nothing is square. So everything you need to do is custom made or custom built. And we had plaster rooms up in the attic. That was different. Normally it's arched and the plaster doesn't get done much anymore. So we had to get a plaster in from Ireland to do the work. Yeah, we got some good shop guys that are very good at what they do, and they would replicate it and then bring it back to site.
As we started going through and poking through and digging deeper, it was like peeling an onion. And unfortunately, this onion did not reveal, a solid core. Where we stood just to the right of me here, there was significant sill beam damage that was located. And the interesting thing was some historic repairs and patches that had been done. They were done as affordably as could be proceeded with at that point in time, but you can't with a structure like this just do Band-Aids, because as you move through time, those Band-Aids then become part of the problem. And so then exposing some of those previous repairs and whatever else, we had to do more expansive restoration work there. The sill beams, the footing, the foundation system, all the foundation underneath this porch that we're stood on right now has all been redone. And again, as we did some of that investigation and some of that investigative work, it revealed more problems. And they were not a structural problem that you could just say, oh, okay to next year, because we had to restore the porch. And so the foundation had repaired first and then restore the porch. Some of the details and some of the dental work and some of the the finishes around that corner on that awning up there, just amazing. And to think that, artisans back in 1842 constructed that. And now here we are in 2024, undertaking repairs. And then the artisans that we had working on this had to still maintain those skills and that artistry and those carpenters now to replace that. And I think they've just done a marvelous job. You can't see any joints. Things are put together very well. Structurally, the beam, the black walnut beam, locally sourced from local sawmills, and then transported here and then placed into this structure to bring it back to where it is today.
And as they worked around the home, the contractors were very good about handing in any square head nails or small pieces of hardware that were found. There was a really lovely iron axe head that was discovered that will be displayed. So we're really pleased to have that. It's just currently being examined and dated, but we do believe it's from the Park family period. So that real connection between that artifact and those hands constructing potentially this house or felling trees here at that time and the work we're doing today really, as I said, connects us to those people in that past tangibly.
It's an incredible site. I mean, we've fallen in love with it just coming here, just watching the reflection on the lake even today. It's a beautiful representation of an early farm context. A lot of the buildings to the site are original. The horse barn here is a gorgeous building as well. There's several, the piggery. All these elements are amazing in describing a period of time, a way of life, and methods that were used to produce, to enjoy food, and all the things that sustain life at that time.
I think every old building is important to keep and to make it back to historically correct as you possibly can for future people and generations to enjoy.
Having this work done and knowing that we've gone right down to those fundamental structural levels, I feel really confidently and really really good about bringing people back into the space, you know, welcoming children, school groups, families of all ages to explore and enjoy, and without that burden of worry that, you know, it was in a deteriorating condition. So now we're just in a really wonderful launch point forward. We're just so pleased with the restoration. As you know, the historic house is the most important artifact here at the John R. Park Homestead. And our job at the Conservation Authority is to preserve the collection to the best of our ability in perpetuity for the public to enjoy and experience, hopefully for generations to come. So this work really came at a critical time to ensure that future generations will still be able to visit, to experience, and to find education and inspiration in this special space.
Bravo. I mean, without people that are willing to support and understand the value of history, a lot of projects like this actually can't be done. And so that is an invaluable portion of preserving our history, understanding our history, and we appreciate all those people that step in and step up to help support and finance these kinds of projects.
It's important to maintain these edifices. I don't think anybody can have a realization of where you're going forward if you don't have an acknowledgement of from where you came from. So history is very, very important, and this is significant for this region, this historical edifice. This is a heck of a legacy. Quite proud of it, and we saved it, and generations to come will be able to enjoy it.